Welcome. Let me see. I hope I have the right microphone here. Don't seem to have the right microphone. Yeah, I do. Well, can you hear me? Yeah, I think you can hear me, but it seems a little low. Maybe is the wind noise terribly awful? Let me know. Is it okay? Volume level is okay? Not bad. I think the wind is blowing right on it. Okay, it sounds good. That's all I want to hear. I don't care if it's true or not. I just want to hear that it sounds good. Okay, here we go. Phaladipika. Why Phaladipika? Why is it so... It's very, very lucky and fortunate that we have some interest in Phaladipika. Because without something like Phaladipika, all we have is hearsay. Somebody says this, somebody says the other thing, somebody says another thing. And you have no sense of ground. You have no sense of roots or grounding. But when you have classic texts in their original language, you have a great wealth that gives you a lot of confidence that whether it doesn't necessarily make the ideas better or worse, but it does make them more original and authentic, which is very helpful when trying to figure out which idea came from what and what idea is more primary and important. So congratulations on coming to the Phaladipika stream. Congratulations on having good taste in knowledge and information. And let's get started. We are in chapter 13, which is about longevity. It's an interesting progress, actually, of how the chapters are progressing. He had a chapter about female-specific horoscopy, which what's the difference between a male and a female? The main difference is that women have babies. They're mothers. So most of the stuff in the female horoscopy section that makes it different from male horoscopy is just baby-specific stuff. So the next chapter after that was fertility. And then the next chapter after that is this one, I believe. It's the lifespan. The success on a successful birth, then you determine the lifespan. And the beginning of the chapter was very short lifespans, the risk of losing an infant right away, losing an infant. Even he gave some techniques for the risk of losing a child during birth or during the pregnancy. Then those short lifespans up to 12 years of age. But now he's in this section where he's talking about regular lifespans, more or less, although they will range from short to medium to long, or short, medium, full. So full is between 70-ish and 100. Medium is between 32 and 70-ish. 30-ish and 70-ish, and less than 30-ish is short. So now we're going to get techniques how to figure out which of those three categories a person is in. can't show you the whole chapter at once, but I can tell you that before you make any judgments about any of the techniques that are being discussed, or before you actually try to utilize any of the techniques that are being discussed, you should make sure you have at least the whole chapter under your belt, because he will say things at the end that are quite important for modifying any of these results that you get from using these techniques. But since we must progress step by step, let's progress the next step and see what kind of techniques he presents us with. So we're on 14th text. This is the first technique. Today we'll cover 3. Lagdendvos tadadhishayor apimito lagnesha randreshayor drekanasva navamshakad apimitas tadvadasam shat kramat ayur dirga samalpatam chanana gahyang gaishareta sthire pruyadvandva charastirair ubhayabhi stansu dvideha tanai. Very difficult to translate, not because the meaning is weird, just because it's more like a table. He's giving us a table. So the first line that he says is Lagnendvos. Lagnendvo means the Lagna and the moon as a pair, not as two separate things. So it means Lagna, ascendant, and moon. But the Adishayor, the lords of those. So what he wants us to focus on for the longevity technique is the Lord of the first and the Lord of the moon. That gives you an idea about astrology and interpretation in general, how the Lord of a planet determines how nourished the planet will be, determines how well the planet will be supplied or treated. So the Lord of the first determines how well the body will be treated by fate. The Lord of the moon also determines the same, how well the health and nutrition and so forth. And then mita means twice, take them twice. Count them twice. Lagnesha Randreshayo. And then also the first Lord and the eighth Lord. So this is not an easy translation because the verse itself is much better expressed as a table. But what he's saying is take the first Lord and the moon's Lord, and also take the first Lord and the eighth Lord. But he has this thing about taking the first and the moons twice, and you'll see why in a second. Then he says, Drekarnat, from the Drakan, which is the third division, the D3, every 10 degrees of a sign. Drakanat, Svanavamshakat, and also from the Navamsha, which is every 3 1/3 degrees of a sign, the 9 divisions of a sign. And also Dvadashamsa, from the D12, the 12 divisions of a sign. So what he's saying is, take these pairs, the first Lord and the moon's Lord, and the first Lord and the eighth Lord, and look at them in the Drakan, Navamsha, and Dvadashamsa, the D3, the D9, and the D12. That's why he says take the first Lord and moon twice. So the first Lord and moon will be for the Drakan and the Navamsha, and then the first Lord and the eighth Lord will be for the D12. Now he says the ayu, the lifespan, will be dirga, sama, or alpa. Will be long, medium, or short, depending on charana gahyang gaishare atastire bruyadvandva, whether one is cardinal and the other is cardinal, fixed, or dual. Charastirayer ubhayabhais tansu, whether one is fixed and then the other is dual, cardinal, or fixed. And dvi de hatanai, when one is dual, the other one is fixed, dual, and cardinal. So it's just easier to explain this as a table. But I'll just try to read it to you first. What he's saying, this first technique is you take these three pairs, you make these three pairs. So let's say A and B in each pair. A will always be the first lord in all three pairs. B is usually the moon's lord, but in the third group it's the eighth lord. So the pairs are the first and moon's lord in the Drakan, then the second one is the first and moon's lord in the Navamsha, and then the third one is the first and the eighth lord in the Dvadashamsa. And for each pair, what you do is, if one is cardinal, then the other is cardinal, fixed, dual, like that, right? So A is the table going down and B is the table going across. So A was always the first lord. So if the first lord is in a cardinal sign, then if the other planet in the pair, which is usually the moon's lord, if that's also in a cardinal sign, then the interpretation is a long lifespan. But if the first lord is in a cardinal sign and the moon's lord is in a medium sign, is in a fixed sign, then it's a medium lifespan, which is 30-ish to 70-ish. And if the first lord is cardinal, but the second planet, the moon's lord, let's say, is dual, then it's a short lifespan. But he doesn't mean in the main chart, he means this is in the D3, the Drakan. You take the first lord and the moon's lord from the main chart, but you look at their signs in these subcharts. This is another window on how people use lordships interchangeably across subcharts. The primary lordship that a planet has is from the D1. Secondarily, they carry many lordships within the context of their subchart, but even within the context of the subchart, the overreaching lordship is from the main chart. So then if the other one is and then you see this is what he was talking about is if, however, the first lord is in a fixed sign, then it's a different setup. So cardinal and cardinal is a long life. Cardinal and fixed is a medium life. Cardinal and dual is a short life. Cardinal and dual is a short life because cardinal is movable and dual is movable, so it won't last long. Cardinal and fixed is a medium life because cardinal is movable and fixed doesn't like to move, but fixed is permanent. Cardinal and cardinal is a long life because that goes far. Cardinal goes places. Cardinal and fixed is always medium. So you see, cardinal and fixed is always medium. Fixed and fixed is short. It doesn't go anywhere. And fixed and dual, however, is long because the fixedness is giving strength, but the dualness is making it expand. And then dual and cardinal is always short. So even when the first one is dual and the second one is cardinal, it's short again. You see? I've seen people talk about this technique before, but they, in the times where I saw people, where I read this technique before, or heard people talk about this technique, I remember them leaving out the D3, D9, and D12. So I've seen this technique misrepresented as just being contained within the main chart. So they would say you take the first lord and the moon's lord, and then if the first lord's sign is cardinal and the moon's lord's sign is cardinal, then you got a long life. And I've also just used that one pair or maybe I've seen them say the first lord and the eighth lord. But I haven't seen this technique described in this much fullness before, where there's 3 pairs and their signs are assessed in 3 amshas, and then of course you would take an average of the results. So to show you an example of this, you take my chart, July 27th, 1970 at 1738 in Bayshore, New York. So that gives you a Capricorn ascendant. So that means the first lord is Saturn, and at that time Saturn was in Taurus at 21 degrees. 21 degrees gives the following amshas. It gives Capricorn for D3, Cancer for D9, and Capricorn for D12. So those are the 3 relevant signs for the first lord, for my first lord. Cardinal, cardinal, and cardinal. My moon is in Mercury. I'm sorry, my moon is in Gemini, and Mercury is the lord of Gemini. So my moon's lord is Mercury. My Mercury is at 25 degrees Leo. 25 degrees Leo gives you the following amshas: Aries D3 and Scorpio D9. What about D12? We don't care, because instead of the moon for the D12, we use the 8th lord. My 8th lord is also in Leo, but it's at 4 degrees. 4 degrees Leo in the D12 is Virgo. So that information that's on the screen right now is everything you need to know to assess the longevity in this chart using this one technique. You better not use just one technique. You will be reprimanded by yours truly. You should definitely use every technique and take the consensus among the techniques. So what does this tell us? In the D3 pair, it's the first lord and the moon's lord. So that's a cardinal first lord, and the moon's lord is Aries, so that's also cardinal. So cardinal first lord, cardinal moon's lord gives a long lifespan, which means from 70 to 100. In the D9, the first lord was in Cancer, which is cardinal, and the moon's lord was in Scorpio, which is fixed. So the D9 is a cardinal first lord and a fixed moon's lord, giving a medium lifespan, indicating a medium lifespan. And in the D12, the first lord is in a cardinal sign, Capricorn, and the 8th lord is in a dual sign. It's cardinal first lord, and then the second guy in the pair is dual. 8th lord is dual. This gives a short indicator. So you sum those all up and you get a medium indicator, right? This part of the longevity calculation indicates medium lifespan. Any questions? Any questions? All right. Now, there's 2 more techniques today. So here's the next text, which contains 2 additional techniques. Lagnadhisha Shubha Kramad Bahusama Payung Shikendra Digai. ga kendradiga randre shograkhaga statha yadigata vyastam vidadhyupalam janmeshashtama nathayor udayapach chidreshayor maitrato bhasvalagnapayas chirayurahitel payu same madhyama. I don't believe in Sandhi at the end of lines. Okay. So, technique 2. Lagnadhisha Shupakramat. Bahu Samau Payum Sikendradigai. First Lord, Lagnadisha, the First Lord, and auspicious planets, Shubha. They are in Kendra Adigah in order, Kramat. So Kendradi means Kendra, Panapar, Apaklama. If you don't know what that is, then shame on you. But these pink houses are Kendras, the green houses are Panapar, and the blue houses are Apaklama. Apakala means last. These are Greek words, by the way. The Apakala means last, and Pana means next, and Kendra means central. So, what he's saying is, if the First Lord and the benefics are all in the Kendra, then it's a long life. He says it, Bahu Sama Alpa. It's Bahu for Kendra, it's Sama for Panapar, and it's Alpa for Apaklama. If the First Lord and benefics are all in these pink houses in the Kendras, then it's a long life. If, however, they're all in the green houses, then it's a medium life. If, however, they're all in the blue houses, 3, 6, 9, and 12, then it's short life, because that's the strength conferred by those squares. The squares are the Kendras, the Panapars, and the Apaklamas. The strength of the Kendra is foremost, the strength of the Apaklama is least, and the strength of Panapar is in the middle. So if the good... What he's actually saying is, the more prominent the First Lord and the benefics, the longer the life. That's what he's really saying. But he's saying so by giving a specific technique for assessing how prominent they are. So, First Lord and auspicious planets in the Kendra, etc., signifies long, medium, and short lifespans in order, respectively. Randresho Ugrakaga. Randresh is the 8th Lord, and Ugrakaga is the mean planets, the rough planets. We say malefics. Yadigata Vyastam Vidadhyupalam. They give the opposite. So, 8th Lord and malefics in Kendra gives the shortest lifespan. 8th Lord and malefics in the middle gives the medium lifespan. And 8th Lord and malefics in the third group, the third square, Apaklama, it gives the longest lifespan. That's also very simple. What he's taking both of these sentences together, what he's really saying is, the more prominent the benefics and the First Lord, the longer the life. The more prominent the 8th Lord and the malefics, the shorter the life. But just so you know, Kendra's 1, 4, 7, 10. Panapar, the second square, is 2, 5, 8, and 11. And Apaklama, the third square, is 3, 6, 9, and 12. Now, I'll give you, let's do an example. We'll do my chart again. This time, I'll give you a picture of it. So, what benefics are First Lord? What planets are in the Kendra? That's really what you want to do. To follow this technique to the letter, you want to say, okay, which planets are in the Kendras, which planets are in Panapar, which planets are in Apaklama. Well, there's one planet in the Kendra, that's it, Jupiter. Oh, hey, nice, it's a benefic. So that indicates a long life. What planets are in Panapar? Color-coded here as green. What planets are in the greenhouses? Well, there's a bunch. There's 4 planets in the greenhouse, and one of them is the first lord, Saturn. 2 of them are malefics, Mars and the Sun, and one of them is a benefic, Mercury. So you got 2 pluses and 2 minuses, but actually anything that's in the middle houses, the Panapars, just indicates medium. Doesn't matter if it's benefic or malefic. So what you see is we have 1 planet indicating long, 4 planets indicating medium, and then in the middle houses, don't take Rahu Ketu into account, Moon and Venus. Moon in 6th, Venus in the 9th. So the Apocalypse have 2 planets in them, 2 benefics, or Moon might be neutral, depending on how you want to think about it. So what do you do with that information? Well, Kendra gives you 1 long, Panapar gives you 4 medium, Apocalypse gives you 1 short, maybe 1.5 or 2 short. So the technique 2 result is medium. You average all that out, it's medium. Okay? That's how that works. I don't, with this technique, it's very clear what he's saying, is that the stronger the benefics and the first lord, the longer the life, and vice versa. So I wouldn't advise you to stick to the letter of this technique, since you have more elaborate ways, more accurate ways that you can assess the dominance or insignificance of various planets. For example, if you have the birth chart overview that I offer on my website, you have a graph with digital numbers for the dominance of each of those planets. So you could just use that math instead. You get a more accurate result. For the first technique, there kind of is no bigger picture to that technique. The technique that we talked about with the cardinal signs, fixed signs, dual signs, as far as I see, there's no bigger picture that that technique is indicating. So use that technique by the letter as it is. Although it does show you that the condition of the first lord, moon, and 8th lord is important. First lord, moon's lord, and 8th lord is important, and it does show you that 3, 9, and 12 are important for lifespan. Okay, any questions about those first 2 techniques? Jonathan, when you do the first technique in the Dracon, how do you know what sign it belongs to? Like if your ascendant lord is in the Saturn division of the Draca. Draca is 3. How did Phaladipika define Draca? Because you can just take the let me show you how you can, the other ways that you can do it. Let's see what he said. Divisions. Here he's just introducing the divisions, putting them into groups, talking about how much strength they have. Thirds of sign belong to the lord of the 1st, 5th, and 9th from the main sign. So the 1st, 5th, and 9th from the main sign is the way you do it. So let's look at this. Give me 1 second and I'll answer this question. Known. So for example, Saturn at 21 degrees is in the 2nd Dracon. It's in the 2nd Dracon of Taurus. So the first Dracon of Taurus is Taurus. Always. First Dracon of any sign is that sign. And then the 2nd Dracon is the next I must not be doing it right. Let me get a picture of it. The first fifth. Oh, Saturn at 21 degrees is in the third. I'm doing it right. I just screwed that one up. From 0 to 10 is the first dracon. From 10.1 to 20 is the second dracon. And from 20.1 to 30 is the third dracon. So if Saturn's at 21 degrees, then it's in the third dracon. The first dracon of any sign is the sign itself. The second dracon is the next sign of that element. And the third dracon is the third sign of that element. So in other words, the first dracon of Taurus is Taurus, the next one is Virgo, and the third one is Capricorn. So that's why Saturn at 21 degrees of Taurus is in Capricorn dracon. The way that Matreshwar defines it was it belongs to those rulers. So what he said was it belongs to Venus, Mercury, and Saturn. The dracons belong to Venus, Mercury, and Saturn in that order in Taurus. Whereas in Gemini it would belong to Mercury, Venus, and Saturn again. Or Mercury, Venus, and Saturn in that order. Because those are the three air signs from Gemini. But because the dracon has the affinity of elements, it's the important thing about the dracon is that it has always the same element as the main sign. So that's why you wouldn't do multricones. If you do multricones, you mess up that affinity. Is it clear? Do we care about, so John, just so that you know exactly what it is, the practical way to determine the signs of the dracon is take any sign. The first dracon is the same as that sign. The second one is the next in its elemental trine. It's the fifth sign from it, and the third dracon is the ninth sign from it. So for Aries, it's Aries, Leo, Sagittarius. For Taurus, it's Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn. For Gemini, it's Gemini, Libra, Aquarius. For Cancer, it's Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces. Inima de loop. Do we care about Saturn in this technique since it represents longevity? No, he just counts it as a malefic. But I thought Saturn represents longevity. It does, but he didn't care about it in this technique. He does good. Next week, what's going to happen next week is, hey, there's a lot of years between 30-ish and 70-ish, and it makes kind of a big difference whether I die at 33 or 69 or 71 or something. So what he's going to do is he's going to say, once you've determined the general area, the general longevity, whether it being short, medium, or long, then you look for this transits within the three returns of Saturn. And when those transits line up with dashas that involve planets that can bring death, then that's where you can find the death. Heidi asks, regarding the first technique, what if the rulers of the sun and moon are at 0 degrees retrograde in the D1? Would you use the modes of 0 direct and 29 degree? If it's at 0, then it's in that sign. And it doesn't matter if it's retrograde or not. If a planet is located at 0 degrees of a sign, then it's in that sign. So for that technique, you would use the planet is at 0 degrees of Taurus, then it's in a fixed sign. Yeah. Jonathan says, if your Saturn is at 15 degrees Libra, then it's in the Aquarius Dracon. I think so. Let's check. 15 degrees is the second Dracon. The first Dracon of Libra is Libra. The second Dracon is the next air sign, which is Aquarius. So you got that correct. But Heidi, why do you care about the ruler of the sun? Because the first technique did not care about the ruler of the sun at all. The first technique was this one. We care about the first lord and the moon's lord, or the first lord and the eighth lord. $15 Libra is a pretty enviable spot for Saturn. Good going, Stephanie and Jonathan. All right, now let's look at the third technique. Technique 3. Janme Shashtama Nathayor Udaya Pachchidreshayor Maitrato. This is an interesting one. You take the friendship of the lords of the first and eighth from the moon, and the lords of the first and the eighth from the ascendant. Janme Shashtama. The Janmesh means the moon's lord, and the Ashtamanata of the moon, and also of Udaya, Pati, and Chidreshayo. So that's the ascendant lord and the moon and the eighth lord, and you see the friendship between those two. Now the pairs are indicated by the grammar. So the pairs are, what's the friendship of the moon's eighth lord with the moon's first lord? And what's the friendship of the ascendant's eighth lord to the ascendant's first lord? Because the first is the body and the eighth is the longevity of the body. So he's saying another way you can see how well the longevity gets along with the body is what's the friendship level between the lords. This, however, is weird. I'll explain why. He also says, Bhasva Lagna Payash Chirayar Ahite Alpayu Same Madhyama. And also the sun and the ascendant lord. So 3 pairs again. First and eighth from the moon, first and eighth lord from the ascendant, sun and ascendant lord. The sun itself and the ascendant lord. He said if it's friendship, if they have friendship, then that indicates long life. If they have enmity, then that indicates short life. And if they have neutrality, that indicates medium life. So what he's saying is, if your eighth lord is a friend to your first lord, that indicates long life. And if your moon's eighth lord is a friend to your moon's first lord, that still indicates long life. But if your ascendant lord is an enemy to your sun, that indicates short life. So you better take these things into account also when you're determining the lifespan. I find this to be odd. Let me show you. So I'll just show you the example of what it is. I guess I'm not quite ready to explain to you why I feel it's odd. Let me show you how it works first. The moon's first lord is what? In this example chart, the moon's first lord is Mercury, because the moon is in Gemini. And the moon's eighth lord is what? Well, the eighth sign from Gemini is Capricorn. And so Saturn is the moon's eighth lord. What's the friendship between Saturn and Mercury? Saturn is naturally friendly to Mercury, and their distance improves it. the Saturn and Mercury have a distance of 4 signs, which makes relationships better. So you could say very long life. The first lord is Saturn, and the 8th lord is Sun. And I only have to do this once because, the first lord is Saturn, and the 8th lord is the Sun. So the Sun is inimical towards Saturn, and their distance improves it to neutrality. They're 4 signs apart, Saturn and the Sun, so it improves relationships. So it changes their enmity to neutrality, which indicates a medium life. And then the Sun and the Ascendant Lord is the same, because for a Capricorn, the Sun is the 8th Lord. So the average indicated from from Technique 3 is a longish end of the medium lifespan. Now, Technique 3 isn't that impressive. Maybe it is. I don't know. I don't personally feel that impressed by it. Maybe my opinion will be changed at some point. But to explain why I'm not particularly carried away by this third technique, it just indicates that it does indicate that various signs have various life expectancies built into them, which seems quite overly simplistic. But maybe it's not. But anyway, to flesh this out for you, for an Aries ascendant, the first lord and the 8th lord are the same planet. So let's consider them friends. And the first lord is the Sun's friend. So an Aries itself always indicates long life, which seems odd. But okay. Taurus, on the other hand, the first lord is an enemy with the 8th lord. The 8th lord is Jupiter, the first lord is Venus. And the first lord is the sun's enemy. So it's exactly the opposite of Aries. So Taurus always indicates a short life. So if Taurus is rising or the moon sign, it's short life. That also doesn't seem right. Gemini has friendly relation to the 8th lord. The first lord is Mercury, the 8th lord is Saturn, and the sun is neutral towards it. So Gemini is the longish medium. Cancer would be long. First lord is Moon, 8th lord is Jupiter, they're friends, and the first lord is the sun's friend. So it's long. And so like that, you can go through each sign. Leo is medium life because it's an enemy with its 8th lord, Saturn, but it's its own friend. Virgo is shorter medium life because it's enemies with the 8th lord and it's neutral to the sun, or the sun is neutral to it. It's how the 8th lord feels about the first lord, and it's how the sun feels about the first lord that you care about. Libra, the 8th and the first are the same like Aries, and the sun is an enemy though, so it's medium. Scorpio, longish medium. First and the 8th lord are neutral, but the sun likes the first lord. Sagittarius also longish medium for the same reasons. Capricorn short, because the first lord is the sun's enemy and the 8th lord is the sun's enemy. Now, these things can be modified per the person's chart depending on the distance between the planets, but still it's giving these baselines which seem sort of weird. It seems sort of weird to say Aries is long and Taurus is short. I'm not saying that this technique sucks or anything. I'm just saying it doesn't thrill me too much. So those are our 3 techniques for today. Let me know if you have any questions. You would want to use all the techniques, and you're going to want to wait around to hear the whole chapter to make sure you get the rest of the techniques, and also the important points that he makes about at the end about what modifies the implications of these techniques. What he's going to explain in the next verses, as I mentioned before, is once you have a general idea of how long the life is, this is attempting to give you a general idea. Once you have a general idea, then you can look for a key transit within that general time frame. A very difficult transit. When you find a very difficult, if you find a very difficult transit, but the person is at a phase in their life where they're really healthy, then you shouldn't predict death, because they'll be able to overcome that. But when you see a very difficult transit, when a person's longevity is also running low, that's where the number comes up. That's where they get called. So the next verses that we'll cover next week, he'll say, once you have this basic time frame in mind, within that time frame, look for these particular transits with these particular dashas. Any questions about any of this? Yeah, Stephanie. So what do we have? Moon's eighth lord, I'm confused. That's right. So this technique is saying the moon's eighth lord. So if the moon is in Gemini, the moon's eighth lord is Saturn, because Capricorn is the eighth sign from Gemini. Maybe I got something mixed up somewhere along the way, but that's what it is. Statistically, it doesn't seem right. Statistically, Capricorns live a long time. Taurus is also supposed to be a very healthy sign. Aries is supposed to be a very dangerous sign. That's right. It's supposed to suffer some injury. So I'm not so sure about this third technique. But the question here that Jonathan is posing is the one hope that kind of makes it more interesting. He says, would you use conditional or natural relationships of the planet for the third technique? And as you saw in the example that I gave, I used the conditional. It's conditional. So for example, Sun is naturally inimical to Saturn, but in this particular person, Saturn and the Sun tolerate each other. They're neutral. So it doesn't indicate short, it indicates medium. But you still have this bias in the signs, which is you can't get a long lifespan out of Capricorn with this technique. And you can't get a short lifespan out of Aries, which doesn't really sound too thrilling to me as an astrologer. It doesn't sound too tantalizing as an accurate technique. What else? When should we care about these techniques when consulting an astrologer? I don't know, why do people learn about medicine when consulting a doctor? Because you want to, first of all, understand what the doctor is saying. The more well you understand medicine, the more clearly the doctor's words make sense. Same way, the more clearly you understand astrology and the techniques, the easier it is for you to understand what your astrologer is really saying. And also the easier it is for you to have faith and trust in it and therefore act on it. Bhavesh says, should we assess longevity for every chart or in certain situations? Montreshwar's point at the beginning of this chapter is this is the first thing you do. As soon as somebody's born, you should figure out the longevity. Because what's the point of doing? He says, then you figure out the rest of the stuff. Because what's the point of figuring out what's going to happen to this person when they're 93 years old, when they're not going to live to be 93 years old? What's the point of saying this person is going to inherit a kingdom when actually they're not going to live past the age of 8. So he says, first figure out the longevity for every chart, and then scope your other interpretations within that longevity. People don't want to do that these days, because here's one way that you can really tell if you're accurate or not. We know with a number how long people live, and when you say this technique says you should live for 62 years and the person is 93 years old, you don't look that smart as an astrologer, do you? But if you're afraid of that, then you really shouldn't be dealing with this science anyway. I mean, doctors predict that people will die in 2 years and the people are still living 25 years later. Do we say that medicine is pseudoscience? No, we don't say medicine is pseudoscience. We just say, oh, they got that wrong. Or some circumstances, they didn't consider some circumstances. What's the big deal? Do we say, oh, I'm never going to see that doctor again? Not really. Maybe the treatment worked better than they thought, or maybe they didn't do another particular kind of test. Similarly, maybe there's a technique that you didn't apply, or there's something that slipped your mind that you didn't notice. But I feel that people, modern astrologers, tend away from giving longevity predictions because they're too cut and dry. And it's too easy to look wrong. And therefore you have to take an awful lot of time with it, to be really careful with it, to do a lot of work on it. And people don't like to do that. Of course, also it's it's not a pleasant topic. But Bhavana, according to the according to the classical astrologers, this is the first thing that you do before you do anything else in any chart. Knowing the longevity one might have, might you be able to infer remedies to improve or increase it? Isn't that the case with everything? The same answer that you would give for anything indicated by a chart. How remedy interacts with anything. Just think about the very way that he describes the technique, and it answers this question. The very way that he describes the technique is first assess the basic lifespan ballpark. Then within that ballpark, look for the very unfavorable transits and dashas. When you find the very unfavorable dashas and transits happening within that ballpark of the end of the person's life, that's the end of the person's life. So look at what that's actually saying. It's that the longevity indicator by itself doesn't indicate death on its own, and nor do the transits on themselves indicate death on their own. These are indicating certain amount of power, and they're indicating a certain amount of force or power and a certain result to become manifest. If you line them all up, then they multiply their power together and they become powerfully manifest. But that's showing that the indicators in karma are not indicators for specific events. People have this so wrong. We all think that specific events are so important. Specific events are completely unimportant. It's the way that you experience and the specific event which is actually important. It's the inner nature of the event which is important, and actually karma and destiny, everything doesn't really care if you specifically get hit by a car on your left side or on your right side, or doesn't specifically care if you get hit by a car or you get hit by a horse, or fall off a bridge or fall off a building, or get kissed by a blonde or a brunette, or you win the lottery for 1 million or 150 million. It doesn't really care that much about specifics like that. The specifics are up to you to calculate and guess about. Make educated guesses about if you feel the need to know about these specifics. What the astrology is showing is this is a really difficult time in your life. And considering the fact that it's at the end of your longevity span too, then that really difficult time in your life is probably going to end your life. But the nature of the indicators themselves show that it's not said in the chart that death happens at this age. We're interpreting the chart to say that death happens at this age. That means that other effects might come from the same things which are indicated in the chart. You may have a harrowing experience. You may become very ill. You may come close to death. I've come close to death several times. But I'm still here. But if something was a little different, I wouldn't be here. So that's why you interact with the karma, and it changes the specific events. So that's just all in reply to Jonathan, who asked, might you be able to infer remedies to improve or increase it? Kelsey asks, have you seen your own longevity and do you think it was accurate? Because I don't know yet, because I haven't died yet. So I don't know. This guy hasn't died yet. So, I mean, that's humorous, but how am I going to, what do I feel it's accurate? Well, if the assessment would have been that I died at 33, then I would know it's not accurate. We looked at my chart today as the example. That's my chart on the screen right now. So basically what it's saying is there's a window around 70 or 80 years of age. Do I feel that's accurate? No, absolutely not. I'm going to live to be over 100. That's what I feel. And there's something about this. In this chart, you have to understand you haven't even read the whole chapter on longevity. You should at least read the whole chapter from at least one book on the subject before you make a decision about how long a person is going to live. So besides technique A, technique 1, 2, and 3, there's other modifying factors that he's going to mention in this chapter. You just got to be something important about Jupiter being alone in a Kendra. There's got to be something important about the first lord being in a trine, right? So things have to be, the whole thing has to be pictured together. And the other thing is that the techniques themselves are not even the way to read the chart. The techniques themselves are the teaching method of the astrologer to teach you how to read a chart. As we saw, the technique with the Panapars, Apoklimas, and Kendras was very simple to understand in there, that the real way to read the chart there is by seeing the dominants, benefics versus malefics, and first lord versus eighth lord. Jonathan asks, so like Venus in the 8th house could perhaps deliver a result to longevity that's as great as if it's in a Kendra. Because Mantreshwar says Venus in the 8th indicates long life. Did he say that? You probably remember better than me. Let's go check. Planets in house. Venus. This is on screen, right? I'm going to check. Yes, it is. Okay. 11th, 10th, 9th, 8th. Long life. Very good. Jonathan. Chira Yusham. Yeah, so you need to factor that in too. What about Saturn? Does he ever talk about lifespan? Illness in youth. Yeah, he doesn't really talk about lifespan with Saturn. All right, anything else? How do we apply this to our modern average lifespan from country to country? Regardless of country to country, human being maximum lifespan is about 100. This is what he said, actually. Remember this verse? Ashtau balarshtamalao naranam yogarishtam prahura vimshati sat alpam chadvatrimshatam madhyamayush cha sapatya purnamayu santanam. Death within 8 years is called childhood. Death within 20 is called unfortunate death. Within 32 is called short life. Up to 70 is called medium. Up to 100 is called full. Nuinam varshashatam hyayus tasmin sredha vipajyate alpam madhyam digamayurityetat sarvasammatam. It's widely agreed that humans can live for about 100 years, and we can subdivide lifespans into short, average, and long. So it's kind of culturally independent how long a human can live. And you may say it's not culturally independent what the average lifespan is, but the average lifespan is always in between 30-ish and 70-ish, and short is always under 30. So it's pretty robust and resilient against cultural differences and historical differences to use this basic classification. But certainly, if you know the person's culture and they're in a country that has very poor conditions, a lot of wars, stuff like that, then it's easier for you to think that they might die young. You do have to be practical. But I don't overdo it, because yeah, there are no good versions of Phaladipika. That's why I'm doing this live stream, Stephanie. Okay, guys. Thank you for joining me, and see you next week.